What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, May 13th, 2021. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot to talk about today. It's been a very, very busy news day. So we're going to do news until we run out of news, and then we're going to open up the phone lines for your comments, questions, observations, and opinions. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it. We are now hearing that Colonial Pipeline Company paid nearly $5 million to what are now being described as Eastern European hackers last Friday. Now, this contradicts reports earlier this week that the company had no intention of paying the extortion fee to help restore the country's largest fuel pipeline. But the company did pay the hefty ransom in untraceable cryptocurrency within hours after the attack. Now, once they received the payment, the hackers provided Colonial Pipeline with a decrypting tool to restore the disabled computer network, but it turned out the tool was so slow that the company had to go back to using its own backups to restore the system. And so they probably would have been better off not paying the ransom to begin with. Now, interesting little observation. This is from the Gateway Pundit. The same FBI that pushed the Trump-Russia hoax for 3 years and then exaggerated the Russia 2020 election threat is now out there trying to convince us that Russia is to blame for the pipeline hack. And no, I'm sorry. If the FBI told me it was a sunny day, I would feel obliged to take a raincoat. Meanwhile, as of right now, as of airtime, over 15,000 gas stations are out of fuel nationwide. And I don't feel I should have to say this again, but I'm going to. I'm seeing all these videos and photos of people saving gas in ordinary plastic shopping bags. It's one of the dumbest things that you can do. You should not be doing it. For one thing, the gasoline will etch right through those plastic bags and get onto your car trunk or your garage floor or wherever you're keeping it. So if you're going to stockpile gasoline, you need a proper gas container. And even then, just so that you understand this, gasoline does not keep for very long. You can buy a special preservative to put in the gasoline to make it last like about 6 months, and it will still work in your car or lawnmower or snowmobile after that. But it does not store indefinitely. Story coming out of Scoopy Web saying that East Coast gas supplies could take as long as 2 weeks to return to normal. And we're seeing the shortages from Houston all the way up the East Coast. Now, it hasn't really hit here in Indiana yet, but we are exercising the appropriate caution. Speaking of the appropriate caution, according to Zero Hedge, the Biden-Harris administration is actually looking at the possibility of using foreign tankers to move domestic fuel supplies, load them up down in Houston, bring them on up to the coast, and offload there until the pipeline is back at full capacity. So we'll see what's going to happen with that one. Taking advantage of the crisis for political reasons, Biden's energy secretary, Granholm, is out there saying, well, if you drove an electric car, this would not be affecting you. Well, actually, yes, it would. Because at some point the electricity to charge that car has to be generated, and in this country that is still for the most part coal and oil and gas-fired power plants. Okay, now getting on down to Maricopa, things are getting very intense there. There are now 3 known serious issues in the Republican audit of Maricopa County. According to a letter from Karen Fan, who's president of the Arizona State Senate, sent to the Maricopa Board of Supervisors, the county continues to flout valid legislative subpoenas, refuses to hand over virtual images of routers. The county has also allegedly failed to provide the passwords necessary to access vote tabulation devices for the audits. And attorneys from Maricopa County have refused to produce virtual images of routers used in connection with the general election. Now, a second issue flagged by the audit has to do with the, shall we say, anomalies in the chain of custody for the ballots. And the letter says the county has yet to provide chain of custody documentation. Bags storing the ballots were not sealed. Batch dividers are missing. Ballot boxes were sealed with regular tape rather than tamper evidence seals. And this was a big issue if you've ever seen that HBO documentary, Hacking Democracy. And they demonstrated how these so-called seals for the ballot boxes could be peeled right off and put right back on again without leaving a trace. Now, the third issue, and this is a major one, the entire database directory from the EMS primary voting machine has been deleted. This means subpoenaed data has been erased. And according to the audit, there is also evidence that the main database for all election-related data for the 2020 general election has been removed. And according to a story that we are seeing coming on out of Creative Destruction Media, Maricopa County deleted the database 10 days prior to turning over the equipment for the audit. Gee, got something to hide there, people? So it's getting more and more obvious they are trying to cover up. Maybe not the fact that the election was stolen, but they're definitely trying to hide the evidence of who exactly was behind it, so that they, they're obviously now more afraid of prosecution than they are of the election being reversed. And there was another incident that happened back in November. And that was when dumpster divers found shredded ballots in Maricopa County. The incident came to light shortly after the election. The county commissioner said, oh, they're ballots from like years and years ago. We just happened to completely by coincidence shred them on the night of the election. Getting into other stories, over at National File, there is a video, and it's from Black Lives Matter, and it shows a Black Lives Matter insurrectionist screaming, he can't wait until black people lynch white people. So it is a call to violence. And the protester was screaming at an onlooker, I can't wait until black people hang you. So, yeah, it's definitely a call to violence here, certainly much more obvious than the one that they tried the second impeachment of Donald Trump for. Story coming on out of Investment Watch blog, the Black Lives Matter organization is now shaking down the entire nation for cash, demanding direct cash payments from government, or they will start burning down cities. They're running a little extortion racket there. Okay, so why aren't we seeing arrests? Another story, this one coming on out of Patriot Rising. Why is the government still hiding video footage from the January 6th protest up at the Capitol building? And Republicans and the corporate media, certainly the independent media, should demand the release of all the footage from all the cameras at the Capitol building that day, because we still don't know exactly what happened. We don't know who shot Ashley Babbitt. And it's very obvious the government wants to hide something about what happened on that day. Getting into COVID-19, which is still out there, the CDC is confirming even more cases of the rare blood clot disorder linked to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They have confirmed 28 new cases, including 6 in men, of a rare blood clotting disorder in adults who received the J&J vaccine. And Dr. Tom Shimabukuro, the Deputy Director of the Immunization Safety Office at the CDC, presented the new cases on Wednesday at a meeting of a panel of advisors to the CDC. The figure is an increase from the previous 15 confirmed cases, all of which were actually in women that were reported in last month's meeting. So there we are. Dr. Ryan Cole, owner and operator of Cole Diagnostics, is out there saying that we have seen more deaths from this current vaccine than all vaccines in the last 20 years combined. And it is. We're back in 1976 territory, the swine flu debacle, where the vaccine turned out to be killing more people than the virus was. And it looks like we're getting close to that again. And as a reminder to all those drones over at social media who are shutting down posts urging caution about getting the vaccine, all of these deaths and injuries and illnesses are on your soul. And you can't bail out of it by saying you were just following the orders of your bosses. The Nazis tried that excuse at Nuremberg, and they were still hanged. Story coming on out of Global Research up in Canada. The Children's Health Defense and Parental Rights Foundation are preparing to jointly file a lawsuit challenging the Washington, D.C. Minor Consent for Vaccinations Amendment Act of 2020 as unconstitutional. Now, this law allows children 11 and older to be vaccinated at school without the knowledge or consent of the parent. And under the new law, even if the parent has previously submitted a written exemption statement, school officials may secretly administer vaccines to the child against the parent's written directive. Boy, they are desperate to get this stuff into everybody's arm, aren't they? Kind of makes you wild. I love this story. Over in India, they had this health ambassador, and he's a former comedian, entertainer, and he got his COVID-19 vaccine live on TV in late April to show everybody how safe it is, and then he died 2 days later. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. This Saturday, May 15th, there's going to be the second annual global protest over COVID restrictions. And this Saturday, people in more than 40 countries will participate in the second worldwide demonstration protesting the unprecedented COVID-19 restrictions that have severely curtailed basic human rights, calling for an end to this ubiquitous public incarceration. And I absolutely agree with that. Top scientists, more than a dozen influential infectious disease and vaccine experts, are saying the first round of jabs may be enough to protect against COVID-19, refuting the big pharma claims that regular shots will likely be needed. Of course, they're talking about their bottom line. They don't want a healthy population. They just want repeat customers. Over in Ohio, their governor has lifted the COVID mandates, and he's using federal funds for a $1 million lottery-style drawing for vax recipients. If you are in Ohio and you get vaccinated, you are entered into this lottery where you could win some very, very large prizes. Another way of people convincing people to get the shot. Up in Canada, they're moving to bar people with unpaid COVID fines from getting or renewing a driver's license. This came out just before we went to airtime. The CDC has now announced, this is from the CDC, fully vaccinated Americans can officially ditch their masks indoors. The CDC says it's safe for people who've had their shots to go maskless anywhere except inside crowded places like planes and hospitals. So we're free of the masks according to the CDC. Meanwhile, the CDC has changed the rules for counting what are called breakthrough cases. These are cases of COVID occurring in people who have been vaccinated, and there are a lot of them happening. More fully vaccinated people are testing positive. So now the CDC is saying to maximize the quality of the data, they will stop reporting COVID breakthrough infections that don't result in hospitalization or death. In other words, they're going to hide from you the number of people who've been vaccinated who then test positive for COVID. As long as they don't go to the hospital or die, you don't need to know, according to the CDC. Now, this leads us to the next article from Zero Hedge about how the credibility of the CDC is eroding after the agency failed to update its pandemic mask guidance, as well as recent accusations that powerful teachers' unions are dictating CDC policy in terms of school reopenings. And that certainly seems true. And that may be the reason CDC rushed out this decision on the masks, is to try and get away from that accusation. Now, ever since COVID first showed up, a lot of people have wondered where it came from. Did it really come from this wet market in China? Did it come from the Wuhan Virology Laboratory? And anytime anybody suggested that, it was dismissed as conspiracy theory. And after a year of claiming this is misinformation, the Washington Compost is now saying that COVID accidentally escaped the Chinese lab in Wuhan. And I recall a certain radio host saying exactly the same thing, about a year ago, I think. Meanwhile, Ann Coulter is out there saying she will not be silenced. The experts were wrong, and that COVID could have come from the Wuhan lab after all. And where this is really starting to spark up is what was the Wuhan lab's connection with American laboratories and especially American scientists. And Tucker Carlson did a segment calling for a criminal investigation of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is now facing questions over his role in approving funding of research at the Wuhan Virology Lab that the coronavirus may have escaped from. So this may have been a biological weapon in development, not a very effective one, obviously, but before it was really ready to go, somebody accidentally released it. They stepped on a beaker or something and walked out of the building with it. House Republicans, led by Representative Warren Davidson, have introduced the Fauci's Incompetence Requires Early Dismissal Act. The acronym for that is FIRED. It has the support of several conservatives, including Representatives Chip Roy, Andy Bigg, and Ralph Norman. It would set a retroactive 12-year term limit on the National Institutes or the NIAID director, which Fauci has held on to since 1984. And if the bill becomes law, Fauci would be immediately forced to leave his job. So I love that acronym, FIRED. That's a lot of funny. Down in Florida, a little bit of good news. Governor DeSantis is issuing a full blanket pardon to all citizens of Florida being prosecuted for failing to wear masks or socially distance from each other. And apparently this was a surprise announcement on Fox News. There was a couple that were arrested for not enforcing COVID rules at their gym, and DeSantis showed up and said, "You are hereby pardoned, pardoned, pardoned." And I think that's a really good thing. By the way, before we hit the commercial break, a reminder that back in 2009, Pfizer paid $2.3 billion in the largest healthcare fraud settlement in history, which included bribing doctors to promote their medications. So you want to trust that shot? Go ahead. We'll be right back. And Welcome back to our show here. Let's talk about what's going on over in Israel and Palestine. It is ugly and getting uglier. So far, the death toll from Gaza is 65, including 16 children. 7 people have been killed in Israel. And actually, Gaza's health ministry, they're saying it's 83 Palestinians have been killed, 17 children, and 487 wounded. It's ugly out there, and as we mentioned the other day, the United States has vetoed a United Nations resolution condemning Israel's aggression against Gaza. Okay, now story came out just before we went to airtime here. This is from Sputnik News. The Israeli army is preparing for ground operation in Gaza Strip, and that goes together with this other story out of Zero Hedge about Israel orders massive reinforcement of reserve troops to quell riots. Ground forces amass near Gaza. Now, what I think is going on, some years ago, the government of Israel kind of made this nudge, nudge, wink, wink deal where they would allow the Palestinians to have the Gaza Strip, and in exchange, the rest of the world would turn a blind eye to the increasing encroachment of these settlements on Palestinian land in the West Bank. And when that deal went on down, Israel abandoned the Gaza Strip. They basically blew up anything of any real value there on their way out. And I predicted back then, there is no way that Israel is not going to want to retake the Gaza Strip somewhere down the road once those illegal settlements in the West Bank are facts on the ground as they are today. And so I think we're going to see that happen. They're going to go on in and just clean out the Gaza Strip and say it's now part of Israel again. By the way, a lot of people were speculating that Netanyahu was kicking up all this violence as a desperate attempt to hang on to power, and it may be working because the multi-party coalition government that was going to form to oust him has put that plan on hold, as of reports we got earlier today. So Bibi Netanyahu is once again hanging on to power, no matter how many people have to be killed for it, either Palestinian or Israeli. Yesterday, Hamas offered a ceasefire deal for both sides to quit. Netanyahu has rejected this and saying, that they're preparing for the Gaza ground invasion, and says they will not stop. So, yeah, they're going to take back Gaza here. A top Israeli official, a gentleman by the name of Bennett, said Hamas can surrender or we'll hunt down every commander and every post until we win. So the chair is the rhetoric is out there. This is going to get really, really violent. And according to a story from Electronic Intifada, Israel has been caught misusing old videos to justify what's going on in Gaza. And the Israeli government posted this 2.5-year-old video that was shot in Syria, claiming it is current events in Gaza in order to justify its ongoing bombing campaign that has been going on since Monday. And the exact same video had been posted on YouTube on the 22nd of December 2019 by a user who indicated that it was filmed at Marat el-Numan, a city in northeastern Syria. So this is a very familiar propaganda tactic they use by Israel. Just find a bloody video and say, oh, this is what's happening now. We're justified in doing what we are doing. In other international news here, Tuesday, the Russian Air Force sortied at least one Sukhoi 30 interceptor to trail a trio of French warplanes flying in international airspace over the Black Sea. The French formation included a C-135FR tanker and 2 Mirage 2000D fighters. The Kremlin released a video of the encounter, which showed the French fighters were packing high-tech surveillance pods under the wings. And apparently they were mapping out Russian radars along the coastline there, trying to get intelligence ahead of a potential invasion here. Okay, story coming on out of AutoEvolution.com, and it's talking about the U.S. Army has been given the green light to deliver what's called the Common Infrared Countermeasure System. This is a countermeasure system to dazzle and confuse and thwart incoming missiles that rely on infrared tracking to find their target. Okay, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to talk about the economic news now, and there is a story that came out of Zero Hedge, and the headline pretty much says it all. The U.S. spends 90% more than it collects in the first 7 months of fiscal 2021. In other words, they're spending almost twice as much as they have actually coming on in, and they go into some other numbers inside the article, and they're talking about the almost $1 trillion the U.S. spent in March for the latest fiscal stimulus. But the reality is, this Saturday is the deadline for, the income tax this year. And we're all taxed too much. And one of the reasons taxes are as high as they are is we have a government that habitually spends more than it takes on in. Now, when the income tax was first passed, it was really a very tiny amount, and that's why people really didn't get upset about it. But over the years, it's just grown and grown and grown and grown, and it doesn't matter how much you're paying in taxes when the government is showing no fiscal responsibility whatsoever, spending like there's no tomorrow, and figuring, the next generation is going to take care of this problem somehow. They keep kicking that can down the road to the point where it doesn't even look like a can anymore. It looks like an old beat-up gum wrapper or something. Another article on the same topic. This is from Patriot Rising, and this is called Clown Numbers. Record taxes, record spending, and record deficit continue. And they're looking at the first 7 months of the fiscal 2021, which is October through April. They're referring to the monthly Treasury statement. Federal tax revenues hit a record of $2 trillion for the period, but spending climbed to $4 trillion. And that's really been the problem all along is, when you and I, have so much money in the bank, when we run out of that money, we have to stop spending. That's just the normal way of things. But our government has a credit card called the Federal Reserve. And unfortunately, you and I get the bill for that. And they haven't even tried to pay down the principal in decades. They're just barely able to keep up with the interest. And the reason the Federal Reserve is opposed to a full audit of their books is they don't want you, the American people, to realize just how wealthy they have become on the backs of the American working class. So that's where that is right now. Story coming on out, it's a YouTube video. Corn prices are up roughly 50% so far this year, and warning signs are sounding. There's going to be horrific food inflation. We had a story we talked about earlier in the week where we could see 40% of our disposable income just being spent on eating. Now, as if we didn't have enough problems with the Colonial Pipeline disaster, up in Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer has given Canada 1 week to shut down another pipeline that runs through Michigan. This is breaking a 44-year-old treaty, And this in turn would cause propane shortages in Michigan and fuel shortages in Ontario and Quebec. And you have to wonder, what is Gretchen thinking that she's doing that at this particular time? Now, we've been talking about United States infrastructure and its deplorable condition, and we got a really good illustration of that because there is a bridge. It's on the I-40, and it links Arkansas and Tennessee, and it was recently inspected, and they found this gigantic crack in one of the main stress-bearing components of the bridge. So they've had to shut it down. They shut it down Tuesday afternoon. They're calling this crack a significant fracture, and it's in one of the two 900-foot-long horizontal steel beams that are crucial to the bridge's integrity. Needless to say, this has created a huge logistical nightmare for people having to go around and find other ways to get across the river there. But they're saying it's probably going to be a couple of months before they can reopen the bridge. They promise they're going to make sure the bridge is safe before it's reopened. But again, as if our supply chains didn't have enough problems. Righty. Now, a little bit of good news. Stories coming out of UNS.com. And it notes that all of a sudden, ordinary Americans are getting involved in the debate regarding critical race theory. They're recognizing it as anti-white and, Marxist in nature. And there is this grassroots movement at the state and local level that is forcing state legislatures and school boards to back down from supporting this communist doctrine. And the corporate media is out there trying to explain things to the peasants who don't want their children harmed. But it's not working very well. In fact, over in America's wealthiest county in Virginia, they're getting ready. In fact, they've launched a campaign to recall the entire school board for infecting their children with critical race theory. And I hope they succeed. It's absolute brainwashing. It's not a cure for racism. It, in fact, is going to increase racial tension in our society. Over in Oklahoma City, their school board has rejected the new anti-critical race theory law, saying it only exists to protect white fragility. Those white people, they're so tender and delicate, and they're so upset over critical race theory, and we shouldn't pay attention to them. Out in California, you're going to love this one. California's gun grabbers are actually considering softening the gun crime laws because more persons of color are violating them. So their solution to the disproportionate number of violent criminals of color in the prisons is to make the crimes they're committing less serious, so they'll get less jail time, all in the name of equity. And of course, that tells you gun crime is actually going to go up because the deterrent value of a gun crime conviction is being taken away. Getting into some science news here, they had a big earthquake down in Panama, magnitude 6.0. Some buildings collapsed. We're not hearing if there was any damage to either the existing canal or the new one the Chinese are just bringing online. A sufficient quake could bring down a landslide at what's called the Galliard Cut, which is a very geologically unstable area right in the middle of the original canal. So we'll see what's going to happen there. Last week, we had a tropical storm form called Andres. It was the earliest named storm to develop in the eastern Pacific Ocean, surpassing Storm Adrian back in 2017. Andres became a tropical storm just about a week ago, according to the National Weather Service, and it had sustained winds of 40 miles an hour and moved out to sea at 6 miles per hour. Now, the reason for this is This is signaling that there's going to be another busy hurricane season. And there was another article floating around today about how down in Louisiana, they're already trying to take steps to protect against major storms coming ashore there. A lot of people have been talking about the GMO mosquitoes that have been released in Florida. And the idea is that they've got these genetically engineered mosquitoes that are going to mate with wild mosquitoes and prevent them from reproducing in an effort to basically drive them extinct, including the specific species Aedes aegypti, a mosquito species that carries dengue and yellow fever virus. And we can certainly hope it works, but a lot of people are very, very concerned that, you know, a mistake with GMO and we could have super mosquitoes out there carrying even worse diseases. I saw another article that came through today where the U.S. Department of Agriculture is going to allow the release of GMO trees into the wild. And that actually reminds me of a project I tried to do back in college when I wanted to genetically splice the marijuana plant with the redwood trees, and it would have revolutionized the lawn furniture industry, I'm sure. Anyway, out in space, specifically the asteroid Bennu, NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission has started its 2-year journey home, carrying samples of the asteroid. It will have to circle the sun twice, covering 1.4 billion miles to catch up with planet Earth. And so that will be interesting to get that material back on Earth and analyze it. I'm a little less sanguine about this story. And it's from space.com. NASA wants a Mars sample return mission. And they're planning to bring a sample of Mars back to Earth in 2031. And the concern there is that a lot of people, and I am one of them, are convinced there is indigenous life on Mars based on the results from the labeled release experiment on the Viking landers. And we've seen this weird thing with Curiosity and Perseverance, where NASA keeps saying could have been alive, may have been alive in the past, maybe this, maybe that. They're really afraid to make a definitive statement as to what's going on. And maybe that's because they are feeling embarrassed by the definitive statement they made after Viking that there was no life on Mars. So I know back during the Apollo missions, they spent a lot of money on what was called the Lunar Receiving Laboratory. And that was really kind of a long shot because nobody expected there were going to be any biological samples in the returned moon rocks, but everybody figured, you know, better safe than sorry. And then, of course, when Apollo 11 came back to Earth, they were bouncing around in the ocean so much they couldn't wait to haul them up and put them into the isolated environment. So they cracked open the hatch, and had there really been some kind of a lunar bug out there, it would have escaped at that point. Fortunately, it didn't happen. May not be as easy in terms of a Mars sample, and I am hoping that Mars will treat a potential sample return as a potential biological hazard with all of the due precautions that would require. So we'll see what happens with that. Getting on over to the James Webb Space Telescope. They're still working on that. This is the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. It'll be able to see from the near ultraviolet into the near infrared. And they wound up testing its giant mirror. Unlike the Hubble, where the primary mirror is a single piece, the mirror of the James Webb Space Telescope is in pieces that have to unfold into place to create the final objective. And they ran another test on that. This was the last test ahead of its launch this coming October, and it worked absolutely perfectly, and I hope they have a lot of luck with it. I remember when they put up Hubble and discovered it was nearsighted. Little bit of a goof and an embarrassment there, and I wish them a lot of luck with the James Webb's telescope. And they're planning on launching the James Webb Telescope on an Ariane 5 from a site in French Guinea this coming October. Over in Chernobyl, people are starting to get worried because sensors are detecting increased levels of neutrons in an inaccessible chamber at the Chernobyl site, which is an indicator that nuclear fission reactions are taking place spontaneously in the entombed reactor hall. And the signs that fission reactions are occurring 35 years after the original meltdown is a tremendous concern. This was the worst ever nuclear disaster in the world up until Fukushima. And the nuclear fission reactions appear to be taking place in a room that is sealed with concrete and contains a large part of the uranium fuel of the former reactor. So Neil Hyatt, a nuclear materials chemist at the University of Sheffield, said it's like the embers in a barbecue pit. Well, except that it could increase. There has been a breakthrough in batteries. There was actually a different breakthrough reported earlier. As you know, lithium-ion batteries are all the rage right now, and they're used in smartphones and electric cars, and they're really very hip. Somebody has pioneered a lithium metal battery that has a higher capacity and a faster charge time, and now somebody has developed a graphene aluminum ion battery. This is from Brisbane-based Graphene Manufacturing Group. It charges up to 60 times faster than the best lithium-ion cells and holds 3 times the energy of the best aluminum-based cells. They're also safer. There's no upper ampere limit to cause spontaneous overheating, more sustainable and easier to recycle because of the stable base materials. This is sounding like a really, really good idea, and they're planning on rolling out electric vehicle batteries in early 2024. So that's going to be a really good idea. Okay, we're coming up on a commercial break. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines now, area code 512-248-8252. And getting on back to some other news here. There's, hang on a second, wrong page here. We are continuing to hear about more violence, not just in Israel and Palestine, but around the world. There are Palestinian supporters who are out there, and of course Israel supporters are out there trying to beat them down here. And let's see. The World Health Organization is asking for billions of dollars more of taxpayer money for their mass vaccination scheme. Got to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. To our show here, and the phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. And before we start taking phone calls, I have a small announcement to make. We are still working on a live streaming video feed. We're looking at one system very closely, and if we are lucky, it'll be back up and running on Monday's show. But in the meantime, I am recording these programs yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and sending them over to Ron Gibson for his video archive, so you can still see the programs and see my handsome face if you want over there at Ron Gibson's archive there. All right, let's go to the phones here, and we're going to start with Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, good day to you guys. Good day to everybody. Yeah, Michael, what's on my mind is I just was going through watching this. I was going through the news networks, and CNN was talking about there's going to be a blood moon at the end of the month.
Yes.
There's going to be a blood moon. I guess it's going to last for 30 days. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, they can talk about a blood moon, but they won't talk about all the blood and violence that BLM and Antifa's created. And then,
Yeah.
I was looking at Newsmax, and Newsmax just happened to have a report about Chicago. Tuesday and Wednesday in a 24-hour period, 15 shot, 6 dead. Again, that's only on a Tuesday, Wednesday. The weekend's not even here.
Yes.
They're reporting on that. Then I look at, and I saw it on Breitbart. So, I mean, it's on Breitbart. It's on Newsmax. I haven't checked out the Drudge Sludge report, the kosher report, but I'm sure that they'll probably even say something about, eventually they're going to have to start talking to these leftist communist networks. Are going to have to talk about the violence in the inner cities of our country.
Yes.
They want to talk about Israel, but CNN sure does tell you about all the violence that the Palestinians and Israelis are talking about, but they don't say nothing, not a damn thing about all the inner city violence going on throughout this country. Like I said, Mike, 15 shot, they're talking about the CNN's talking about a blood moon, but they won't talk about the violence. So, Newsmax is talking about 15 shot in a 24-hour period in Chicago.
Yes.
So I just think that's very interesting, really crazy. And another thing, Mike, is now I'm going to get back to immigration. And before I go there, here in South Florida, have you heard what happened with the news crew on South Beach?
No, I did not.
Yeah, on South Beach, they had like 4 reporters attacked by like 30 people, I guess, like, I don't know if they're Antifa or whatever they are. They attacked the whole news crew. It's all over South Florida news right now, so you can check that out. You'll hear about it. They attacked like 4 of the news crew cast, I think, over Channel 7. They attacked them. It was like poetic justice. All these licky, kissy, touchy, feely, news networks here getting attacked by a violent group over in South Beach. So I just thought that was interesting. Yeah, and Mike, and another thing is, we heard yesterday a lady got a show for Sunday. That's wonderful.
Yes, Layla got her show on Sunday.
I think Miles might be a good guy to get a show, or and we haven't heard from that guy Paul in New York. Paul would probably be pretty good. Paul brings up some interesting points on race. So I think Paul would be good on that because he's pretty knowledgeable about what's going on with that.
Okay, well, Tom, those decisions are up to John Stadmiller. We got to take a break for station identification. Don't hang up. Okay. I'm going to bring you back after these few words. And welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with Tom in Florida. And Tom, I think you wanted to give us the usual tirade about immigration.
Yeah, well, Mike, before I do that, our governor here, Ron DeSantis, Mike, today he came out and he's pardoned all these people that caused supposedly not wearing their masks. So he's giving them all a pardon when they got these fines.
Yeah, we reported on that earlier in the show.
Yeah, right. And so also he's trying to stop this. They're going to try to sneak a caravan of Venezuelans in from Texas into Florida, and I think DeSantis is saying no. Also, I'm sure you heard about Marsha Blackburn, Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, telling the Biden administration, she's basically telling the Republicans and the Democrats, no, we're going to keep these illegals in Mexico the way Trump had it. But this bumbling buffoon is saying, no, we're going to bring them here. Well, Marsha Blackburn's 100% right. But, Mike, there you go again, what you've been saying for years, Title VIII.
Yes.
We can't not allow this. The law is being broken by this bumbling buffoon, Mike. You have that Kamala Harris has been shut her mouth. She hasn't said a damn word about it. Been charged in a border and all that. This is insane. This is absolutely off the charts, Mike.
Yes.
But here, we got a governor here in this state who's not going to play. He's basically saying there's no sanctuary cities. You're not coming here illegally. Come to this country, you come here legally. You learn the language, you speak English, or you get out. We don't need all this, Mike. We don't need this insanity. It's got to stop and desist. But, these teachers' unions, Mike, they're absolutely appalling what they're doing to our country. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening what teacher unions are doing. The demon rats.
Okay, could you hold the microphone on the phone a little closer to your mouth? We're having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, we have a storm here in South Florida.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, anyway, Mike, that's what I'm basically saying that, we're going to have to see how this plays out with these senators that, are trying to be conservative about our immigration policies, Mike. But, they're getting stabbed in the back, and, somebody...
That's still bad. Still bad.
Yeah, it is. Tom, we really cannot understand you.
Can you hear me now, Mike? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a lot better now, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Mike, it's just appalling what, some of these senators are trying to, they're bringing out bills, and they don't have no backing, Mike. There's no backing with these rhinos. It's just terrible, and the country's just being torn apart.
Yes, it
right
is.
Now, it's being torn apart. Like California, the health care that these illegals are getting alone is just tearing this country apart.
Yes.
And it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts what is being put on the American public, the taxpayers. Inflation's going off the charts. I mean, Mike, one more thing. Donald Trump's he's right on one thing he just said yesterday. This guy Biden's going to be worse than Jimmy Carter, man.
I'm afraid that is definitely going to be true.
That's going to come out to be true. That this guy Biden is a bigger imbecile than Carter was.
Mm-hmm.
And Carter actually was, he did kind of love his country, but this bumbling buffoon, this guy don't know. He's a puppet. he's definitely a puppet.
Yes.
The puppet master. So it's just appalling, with this illegal immigration and all this stuff that we're dealing with in this country. And Mike, it's all going to come down to food. Gas is going to be rationed probably. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Because they want everybody to go on a car battery, and I don't know. It's just disgusting, Mike. It's disgusting what's happening in our United States of America.
Yeah, it is.
And we're having a problem even with the language in this country. Nobody want basically all these new people coming from all over the world. They don't really want to learn English. They want to keep their own cultural identity. Well, why are they coming here?
Well, they even people who've been born in this country, want to change the language. Remember Ebonics?
Yes, of course. Oh, yes.
Real Tower of Babel stuff.
Yes, that's what's happening in our country, Mike. And I do believe what's going to really be a linchpin for the future of our country, what's going to happen in France. I'm hoping it's Marine Le Pen does win that.
Yeah, me too. Macron needs to go.
That guy's got to go. He's another joke. But yeah, Mike, I know you got other callers, so I'll let you go. But yeah, Mike, what's going on with all this crime? BLM getting away with murder, basically, Antifa. And if it would have been the white militias doing all this, man, they would have the military out, Mike. They would have the military out loaded fully for bear. Let me tell you, if it would have been white groups doing all this burning and looting.
Yes.
Let's not kid ourselves. If you had 20,000 skinheads running around the cities burning up everything and doing their salute, man, they would have the military on them. They'd have the police. They'd have the military on the skinheads or any of these white organizations. It's a disgrace. And Mike, one more thing. We are the majority, the white Anglos in this country, where we are acting like a minority bunch of wimps.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happened here. It's shameful. It's really shameful. Because of media, like Peter said, we know who's controlling the media. Controls the mind.
Yep.
And that's exactly what's going on, what Peter says. So, anyway, I'll let you go, Mike. Thank you for taking my call, and have a great day. And like I said, congratulations with her, Layla. But there's other guys that are really good too. So just wanted to throw that out.
Well, there's only so many slots open there, and we're all wishing Layla good luck on her program. So thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and go to Dan in Washington State. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. Real quick on Tom's call, it seems like the blood moon. Whenever the media starts talking about a blood moon, watch Israel. Same with Purim. It seems like those two dates seem to have some kind of prophetic thing going on with Israel there, with military strikes or riots or what we see right now with Gaza. But have you ever noticed that, the blood moon prophecy? Do you know anything about that?
Well, yeah, but anytime there's a lunar eclipse, which we have coming up, before and after, there's going to be a blood moon for the same reason that sunrises and sunsets on Earth are red. Because the illumination of the moon is coming through the Earth's atmosphere, the blue light gets filtered out. And so, that's what you get is the so-called blood moon. And it happens even if there isn't actually an eclipse.
Okay, yeah. It seems like they focus on it more times than others, I guess. Real quick, the other day you were talking about replacing the J word with Zionism.
Yes.
And I was listening to Eric Stryker's show, Strike and Mike, and they reported that the term Zionism itself or anti-Zionists are being censored off of Facebook and Twitter.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah. So the days of just kind of being a peaceful anti-Zionist seem to be over as well.
Yeah.
And also last year, Trump supported, the House voted to say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I don't know what that was, just like a resolution or whatever.
Well, they're adopting, this definition of anti-Semitism that Israel has been promoting that says criticism of anything Israel does is really just hatred of the Jews, which to my mind is like claiming that criticism of the Nazis is rooted only in the fact that people hate the Germans. And that they didn't really do anything deserving of our hate other than being born German.
Yeah, well, yeah, and anything helping Palestinians or arguing that point of view is being stomped out. So I would suggest the chosen people. I like that term because that would censor a lot of the Zionist Christian preachers out there.
Yes.
If they started censoring that term. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that point up, and thanks for taking the call.
All right, you've got it. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to go to Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I bet Jimmy
there you
Carter's really pulling for. I bet Jimmy Carter's really pulling for Biden to become the worst
Yes.
president ever. I mean, he's held that title for 4 decades. I caught the tail end of what you said about the Chernobyl reactor. Can you kind of repeat what you said?
Well, basically, sensors that they've got in the
neutrons.
ground around the remains of the reactor are detecting an increase in neutron activity, and they think that there is spontaneous fission happening in the remains of the fuel rods of that reactor. And it's basically uncontrollable and uncontrolled, and they're going to keep an eye on it. But like Fukushima, there really isn't much they can do about it.
No, that's what I was going to tell you. I thought that's what I heard. The detection of neutrons like that is really bad news.
Yes,
because that does mean that there are fission reactions taking place there within the core of that reactor. That was a graphite cooled reactor.
Yes, it was.
Which I think was very similar to what Enrico Fermi developed to control the first control nuclear reactions.
Well, the graphite wasn't there for cooling. The graphite was there as a neutron moderator, but it's also, of course, incredibly flammable. And the reactors at Chernobyl did not have containment vessels, and that probably was the biggest single mistake in terms of their construction.
Well, when we say graphite cool, that's what we mean is graphite moderated, because
yes.
the carbon absorbs the neutrons, and the more neutrons you got flying around out there, and the more fission reactions you have taking place, and that's seriously bad news, because that thing could fly out of control. I'd be curious to know what other radioisotopes are picking up in the area, because there's some really nasty.
Well, given that the area the neutrons are escaping from has been sealed in concrete, I imagine that any other radioisotopes being generated are hopefully contained within that concrete barrier. But the real issue is if the fuel rods reach a sufficient temperature to melt, then they're going to collect and pool down in the bottom of that concrete containment, and we could really see them take off, so to speak.
It's not just happening. There's also a lot of gamma radiation associated with that, and gamma radiation doesn't give a damn what the hell you encase it in. Yes, it's going to get through. That's really bad news. I'm going to have to look into that. I'm a big believer in an advocate of nuclear power. I've worked with nuclear power matters for a long time. And my problem with that, if I have a problem with it, is that in the United States, for example, the designs of the plants are not standardized. France derives about 75 to 80% of its electric power from nuclear power plants, but they standardized their designs decades ago.
Yes.
You've never heard of a problem. You've never heard of a problem with a nuclear power plant in France, have you?
No, you haven't.
Never.
One of the things I don't like about the design of the reactor at Fukushima, and it's apparently in use at many sites here in the United States, is the control rods are shoved up from underneath rather than dropped down from overhead, where gravity is assisting you in scramming the reactor.
Well,
and so if you lose your power to the reactor control system, you lose the ability to get those control rods back in.
Yeah, well, that's an engineering problem that I'm not prepared to address. But I can tell you that the big problem with Fukushima was its location.
Yes.
If they're on that subduction zone and on a highly tectonically active subduction zone.
Well, you know, in defense of Japan and the power stations, you know, if they had followed the original recommendations for reinforcement, tsunami wall, power generators on towers and everything, they probably would have done all right, because there was another power station just down the coast at Kanagawa, I think it was, and the guy who was in charge of that construction just really, you know, put his foot down and said, we are going to do all the safety protocols properly, and it's a shame he passed away before the quake and tsunami happened, because that one power station suffered virtually no damage. It is possible to make nuclear power safe, not just when you have the money junkies making the key decisions.
And what that underscores is that with proper siting and engineering, you can avoid those problems.
Yes.
And obviously at Fukushima they didn't, and there are other places where they didn't as well. I mean, the nuclear power, I think, is a sound solution to many of our energy problems long term. But you have to look at the siting engineering issues. You can't shortcut engineering in particular.
Yeah,
I mean,
we still have the waste disposal problem. I mean, you know, how that stuff is just piling up.
Well, that's where I dealt with it, mostly on the waste disposal side, for nearly 4 decades. And that's not an insoluble problem, Mike. I mean, it really isn't. The problem with that is it becomes a matter of fear ginned up by the people who are opposed to handling and disposal of radioactive waste. But that could be done.
Okay.
So I don't regard that as a factor that's going to kill nuclear power. That should kill nuclear power. But the real issue to me is the siting and the engineering in the United States. And in the United States, it's kind of a free-for-all when it comes to designing nuclear power plants, because there's been no effort to try to standardize designs.
Yes.
As has been done in France. And I think if you look at France as a guide, you'd find a lot of inspiration for what we ought to do in the United States with regard to nuclear power. I've said all I've got to say, Mike. Thanks much.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We have lines open right now, area code 512-248-8252. We're going to go to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. There's no such thing as safe nuclear power. Maybe thorium, right?
Thorium cycle is a good option. Fusion is a good option.
Yeah.
You know, fission. The reason the emphasis has been on fission reactors in this country is because, as a side effect, they produce bomb stuff, plutonium.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big fan of solar.
Yep.
I realize it's not efficient, but if you look at the big picture, there's no moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to grease. You know, no one has to sit there and monitor anything. You put it in, that's it. It's going to wear out, but it's not going to cost a whole bunch of money in maintenance or anything else. So, you know, and obviously if a lot more money was spent on it, the efficiency would come up. Anyway,
I keep hearing these tantalizing stories about ways that the efficiency is being brought up, but they never seem to get down to the consumer level.
Well, you know, I mean, obviously, if more people were putting, you know, things in the sky that required an energy source, things would move a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you know as well as I do, I mean, oil is still oil, fossil fuels are still fossil fuels. It goes back hundreds of years to the people that actually run it and control it and all that. So, it's like diamonds, right? I mean,
Yes.
Same sort of idea. You got these cartels, right? The central banks, the Federal Reserve. It's all the same sort of nonsense, right? Cartels. Anyway, the damage being done from this, this pandemic.
Yes.
That's what you want to call it. Is really starting to rear its ugly teeth. I sent you an email.
Yeah, I got the article about the Greyhound bus service, and just shutting down in in Canada, and that's
is a greener's wet dream.
Yeah.
Right. And then on top of that, earlier, the reason why that really caught my ear and eye was because of what you talked about with Michigan, with shutting down that pipeline that delivers almost half of Ontario and Quebec's oil,
yes,
as well as propane for the state of Michigan. Now, what you failed to mention, Mike, and this is the crazy part, that shutdown would require 800 tanker rail cars and 2,000 trucks each day to move oil.
Yes.
That's not going to happen. So that would be the icing on the cake for basically Canada. Because Ontario, I mean, a lot of people would argue it within this country, and I don't really care. Ontario is kind of like the economic.
Okay, Al, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come back to you after these words from our sponsors. Join us on the air, area code 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here, and a quick reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs your continuing support to go on keeping the American public fully informed so that they can make good choices. The postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, if you mail in a donation of $100, you will get your choice of an official RBN coffee mug or an official RBN t-shirt. So include your t-shirt size and a return address. If you send in a donation of $115, you will get both items. And don't forget the Frontside Firearms deal. That is still ongoing as well. All right. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with Al in Canada. And Al, could you just sort of pick up where you left off?
Talking about, the Greyhound is pulled out of Canada
yeah.
for good. They won't be running up here anymore, the bus service, right? Also, when you had mentioned about that pipeline that feeds Ontario and Quebec.
Yes.
Oil, half of their oil. It also feeds Michigan propane.
Yes.
Now, I don't know why obviously they're going to shut this down. I know they're going to shut it down. And I think it's just part of another, a deeper agenda, right, to get us off.
Well, they shut down the Keystone Pipeline claiming environmentalism, but have you seen what those lithium mines look like, on the landscape?
Oh.
It's
awful.
It's going to get a lot of people very, very angry when they can't fuel up their cars or heat their homes or cook their meals.
Well, luckily, we're heading into summer up here, so we won't be heating for much longer. But air conditioning, and then of course, you have to be able to move products around.
Yes.
To different places, and then of course, food. Everybody just forgets about that. If people start starving, there's going to be a lot of social unrest. It could get very, very violent very quickly.
Yes.
But, I don't want to start jumping around like that. I sent you another email on these salt towers. You've seen this stuff for a long time. These molten salt tower power plants, they're restrictive of where you could put them, obviously.
Yes.
Around the equator is the best place. But anyway, the only thing missing from that kind of power generation, because in the end it's steam turbines,
yes,
right, that turn generators. The only thing missing there is the nuclear power plant. Literally.
Yes.
Because from the point where you're exchanging heat for electricity, that's the only difference.
Yes.
And of course, these things keep working at night as long as that molten salt can move.
Yes.
In a still fluid state, these things will continue to work. Obviously, around the equator is the best place to put this. But this points out a very deep problem that obviously had just happened to the United States with Texas. But more of our, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but more of our infrastructure needs to be linked together,
yes,
such as electricity. Because, like I said earlier, right around that equator is the best place to have solar collectors. And if you have a desert, that's a great place to put them, because you can't do much with a desert except maybe make semiconductors.
Yes.
But, there's always limits to the impact that humanity can put on the Earth, where the Earth starts pushing back. And, that sort of thing has to be taken into account, too, when talking about this sort of stuff. But, in the end, I like people like you and myself and everyone that's listening, we're not going to win. The rich folk have already decided what's going to happen, and, the ones that are pulling the strings, and we're just along for the ride. It's like a roller coaster. And it is like a roller coaster, especially lately, Mike. It's sad.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very sad, and it's definitely going to be a rough ride here. Anything else, Al?
Yeah. I appreciate your time, Mike.
Well, I appreciate your call. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Our phone lines are now completely open. Area code 512-248-8252. Do join us here for the remainder of the show. And getting on to some other news here, we are continuing to see more protesters regarding the situation in Palestine and Israel. They're marching in Minnesota, Washington, D.C., even in Oklahoma. This is really taking off, and there are a lot of clashes. This could really turn into something very, very ugly, in the very near future. Over at the Federal Reserve, Oh, we got to take another break for commercials. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. Our show here, and before we take phone calls, a breaking story. Russia Today just came up with the headline. The Israeli Defense Forces have announced that Israeli ground troops are attacking the Gaza Strip. There are no other details. But it looks like absolutely they're just going to go on in and take the strip back over for Israel, and it's an ugly, ugly situation. Boy, I hate being right all the time. All right, we're going to go to the phones now. James in Vancouver. Hello, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but Putin is going to test his Satan II missiles.
Yes.
3 of them.
Yes.
208 tons. Should prove interesting.
Yes.
From the look on his face, I don't think he's bluffing either.
No, Russia has made tremendous gains in their military technology because the whole point of their military is to make better weapons, as opposed to the American military-industrial complex, where the goal is to soak the American taxpayer for as much money as possible in exchange for a bunch of junk, like the F-35, the Zumwalt destroyer, the F-22, and so forth and so on.
Right. And how did it all come to this? I don't know, but I know that he's bent over backwards to be polite to the rest of the world leaders and what do you
Yeah,
call
he's
them,
the only
globalists or
statesman
what?
out there.
Yeah, yeah. But when he's been backed in a corner, and this is history repeating itself.
Yes.
Don't attack Russia. Don't attack Russia. And people are stupid enough to try it. I mean, my background is Hungarian, so I should be, oh, yeah, no, I'm not, because it doesn't make any strategic sense to attack Russia. You're going to get your clock cleaned real good. But anyway, one other thing I wanted to mention is I know a gentleman who got the shot yesterday. He's 30 years old, and today he had to call in sick. He's really sick, so, but anyway.
Well, I'm sorry to hear
So anyway,
that.
thank you. Well, no, but it's just one of those things. People are just doing this. I don't know, But anyway, thanks for taking my call.
You got it, and thank you for the call. We're going to switch over to Andrea in Oklahoma. Hello, Andrea. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind, if this was a chessboard and your opponent was giving you a shot that was killing people, okay, the chessboard has moved in their favor. If they're going to quit producing food in the near future, or as of now, I'd say that's another move for the opponent. Now, if they're going to quit doing gas, here in Oklahoma, we had the worst winter. We had ice storms in October the 17th.
Yeah.
When the branches, all the leaves still were on the trees, and they were breaking. It went on for 2 days, the cracking and booming. It sounded like bombs going up. And then here in February, we got 27 below zero. Excuse me. This is central the United States.
Yes.
And they're going to cut fuel. Excuse me. What is it, 300 million people? There's 300 million of us, and there's 1% of them?
Yes.
And we're going to just sit on our hands and do nothing?
Well, I certainly hope not, and don't forget down here in Indiana, we had that unseasonably late snow that surprised everybody.
It's just been, you said that we were going through a mini Mundarum, and sure enough, you're right again.
Yep.
I think it's a bad move for us to just sit on our hands and knees. We need to be out this Saturday with our protest signs and fill the street, and to heck with, if people are lined up at the gas pumps, this is a chance. Oh, and we're going into war with a country that has good bombs.
Yes.
And that work and equipment that work. It is so piled up against us at this point, and we're still doing nothing. We've got to do something. We've got to show how mad we are and how we're not for this. We've got to stand up for America and for ourselves and our children. Do you all want to starve? What, really? And no, if there's no gas, you can't get to work. So, okay, that's my 2 cents. I'll let you go.
All right. Well, Andrea, thank you very much for that. We have phone lines open right now, area code 512-248-8252. Let's go to Graybeard in Washington State. Hello, Gray. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? I'm with her. She's got a little bit of an idea of what's going on here. And actually, you were talking about those new batteries earlier.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you knew if they were using those carbon nanotubules that they were making at MIT a few years back.
I think there actually is some graphene nanotubes that are involved in that construction.
All right. I thought they might have been doing something like that. Interesting. The other thing I was thinking, as I'm up here in Washington, and between Inslee and his fraudulency, you know what? We're getting it both ways.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what we can really do to change this stuff around, short from the repeat of the Civil War, which nobody really wants, I don't think.
No, I don't think they wanted the first one either, to be very honest.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. What do you think? The idea about instead of going through all that bloodshed and all this and that happy stuff, wouldn't it be nice? The 15th is the second annual, protest to this COVID lockdown crap.
Yeah, this Saturday.
Right? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we could come up with a date to just do the whole end scene from V for Vendetta? Everybody just show up in
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Or something. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it too. I mean, we just have a couple of million people show up and walk up to the Capitol building and say, look, we're not here to cause trouble. We're just here to put the people away that really deserve to be away.
Yeah, well, they tried to do a peaceful protest at the Capitol back on January 6th, but the government sent in agents provocateurs to make it look like it was violent so they could report it that way on the corporate media.
Of course, and they're still looking for a small-scale uprising so they can make a big demonstration of power to scare everybody else into, compliance. I don't know. That's pretty much all I got, other than to say, I wonder what John from Barbados would say about all this stuff going on now.
I do miss him. I really do miss him.
Yeah, he was one of the greats. I'll give you that. Mike, thank you very much. Keep up doing what you're doing. It's appreciated more than you'll ever know.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to stay with it just as long as we can.
Love to Claire, and I'm out.
All right. Thank you very much for the phone call. We have open lines right now, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome back. What's on your mind today?
Yeah. Hi, Mike. I'll get off the line as soon as your phone lines, as soon as you've got other callers. Just let me know.
Okay.
I still believe that January 6th was an ambush.
Yes.
It was clearly well planned, and it's just such a violation of the principles of the Republic, of the Constitution, of everything that any country that has that respects the rights of its citizens. It's just unspeakable. But anyway, the idea of everybody converging in one place at one time peacefully, that would be a wonderful idea if it could be coordinated. But how? That's the problem.
Yeah, that is the problem.
Anyway, back to my original. Yeah, my original call is Israel-Palestine. I'm always worried about that turning into a greater regional conflict. I know they've been picking off one region after another, one country after another, to make things easier for the right-wingers in Israel. But, sometimes I've said this for a long time, and many Arabs don't like to hear it. I used to be very depressed when the Palestinians were under assault.
Yes.
And one day my son said, Mom, what are you so worried about? Why should the Palestinians be any different? This has always happened throughout the history of humanity. And the thing is that unless there's a concession somewhere along the line, whether or not it's if it's a military conquest, one that is completely unbeatable. And let's face it, Israel is unbeatable now and always has been since 1948. A concession by the weaker party saves everyone else from a lot of the ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one could say it's an injustice. You cannot legitimize it, by yielding. But you've got to consider the rights of other people. There are people who are being starved of all sorts of resources around the world.
Yes.
And they're all now rushing to the U.S., and that would not be happening if there wasn't too much focus on just one region. There are so many similarities. Excuse me, I don't know what I've got in my throat. There are so many similarities between those who identify as Arab and those who identify as Jewish.
Yes.
It's really it's an extended family feud that's gone on for far too long, and it's been off and on. And the Jews and the Christians have been killing each other for centuries. One example is those who are familiar with Alexandria.
Yes.
Look up the name Hypatia, Hypatia. She was in Alexandria, and she was caught in the middle of two Christians who were fighting for control of the Christian community. And the Jews and the Christians were constantly killing each other. And she was a pagan, of course. She was a Greek philosopher and a mathematician.
Yes.
So it's just, her story is just an example of the kind of hostilities that have long existed. And the only way to bring it to an end is for people to either accept that one of us will join the other. And there are many Arabs, like the Ra'am, who was joining with Yair Lapid, and the other one is Aman Odeh. I think they recognize that it's self-destructive to keep resisting the immovable, the impossible. It sounds, I'm not saying throw down your arms to a full defeat, and there has to be some mediator to make sure that if they do unite in one country, that everyone has equal rights, and that it does not remain, it cannot call itself strictly a Jewish state only for Jews.
Yeah.
It's got to be a fairness to everybody. Maybe that would create a possibility. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is. Certainly, I've been waiting for things to calm down so I could go back. I'd always dreamed of going back to retire there. But I don't know, whatever influence Arabs that are living in the U.S. have, whatever influence Jews have, it's in the interest of everybody if they find a middle ground and learn to live with each other one way or the other. And usually the weaker party does have to make concessions. They do have to swallow a bitter pill. That's just the way it's always been. And we can't change it because it is a reality. Anyway, I'll get off the phone so others can call in.
Okay, well, we don't actually have any other callers just yet, but thank you for the phone call here, and we do have open lines now. We're getting close to the end of the show, so if you want to call on in, now's the time to do it. Area code 512-248-8252. Now, getting on back to the situation in Israel, we are not seeing any updates yet following up that Russia Today story where the IDF says that ground forces are now entering the Gaza Strip. But I fear the worst. As I said earlier in the show, there was kind of this nudge, wink deal that was made where the Israel surrendered Gaza to the Palestinians in exchange for the world turning a blind eye to the illegal settlements in the West Bank. And when that happened, I did make the prediction that once those settlements were facts on the ground in the West Bank, that Israel would find some pretext for retaking the Gaza Strip, and I do think that's what's happening right now. All righty, getting on back to the COVID-19 situation, there's been an interesting development up in Ontario, and there is this military report that is finding that a lot of the patients in these nursing homes did not die of COVID-19. They died of neglect. And just saying all they needed was water and a wipe down, and they would have been absolutely fine. But sometimes the quality of care in these homes is not really very, very good. Over at the New York Yankees, they have 7 COVID cases in a staff that is supposed to be 100% vaccinated. So we're going to see what's happening over there. Let's see. Apparently, a story coming on out of naturalblaze.com. Doctors up in Canada are now being censored regarding what the government has declared to be COVID misinformation. The same reason YouTube shut my channel down. We're not conforming to the official version of events. And frankly, as these adverse reports keep showing up, it does look like we are headed into a repeat of the swine flu debacle of 1976. And that's a very, very scary situation. We don't know what the long-term consequences of these vaccines are going to be. They're doing the study on the general population. And I saw a report earlier where some of these spike proteins can cause pulmonary difficulties now, in addition to the potential for neurological diseases. Okay, we got callers waiting on the line. We got to wait for a commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today on this Thursday show, and we're going to go to Mitchell in Memphis. Hello, Mitchell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike Rivero, what's going on?
Well, why don't you tell us?
Listen, I just want to make a point. Everybody's talking about, the problems of government and such. I'm looking at I put this stuff together on a Word doc. I've got here reasons the United States government is no longer legitimate. Now, I've got 16 bullet points, and I'm not going to bore you with all of that. One of the big points there is that what most of you guys are talking about on RBN is that the government is not legitimate because of the election.
Yes.
Do you hold to that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll read this. It says, a legitimate government is one which is elected by the people of the country during elections which are held in a free and fair manner.
Yes.
We agree to that.
We agree to
now,
that.
I'll read this. Political authority grants members of a government the right to rule over citizens using coercion if necessary, while imposing an obligation for the citizens to obey government orders. There is no political authority because there is no legitimate government. So why in the hell does everybody keep apologizing for what happened on January the 6th? Congress was not legitimate. Why was Congress in there? If you guys are going to say government's not legitimate and it's tyrannical and it's corrupt, why do you keep apologizing for the government? It's either legitimate or it's not.
Well, I have not been apologizing for the government, and I don't see them as legitimate. And frankly, what happened on January 6th, was hijacked for propaganda purposes by that very illegitimate government.
Well, that's what the media does. But what I'm saying is I hear a lot of people on RBN, including hosts, I'm not specifically talking about you, but they keep talking about, well, the Republicans were peacefully protesting and cooking hot dogs on a grill. It was Antifa and BLM. I don't care who went in there. If the government is not legitimate, the people in there claiming to be government are imposters.
Yes, they are.
They have no rights. They don't have any right of doing what they're doing if we're going to subscribe to and stick to this idea that government is no longer legitimate. And if there's no difference between
you make a very, very good point.
What does that say? The word legitimate and illegitimate is just, what do they call it, a distinction without a difference. At this point, if you're going to say government's not legitimate, while it continues on and we pretend like it is, but there's no difference. Then let's quit talking about government legitimacy. There's no such thing. Legitimacy and illegitimacy are the same thing. That's the way we're treating it. I mean, those people that went in there, like I said, I don't care who went in to the Capitol. I don't care who went in there. The people in Congress, the politicians, have no political authority because it's an illegitimate government. They had no damn reason themselves being in there. That's all I've got to say. And I get tired of hearing people apologizing. I don't care if you went in there to protest or not. You're going in there to protest a bunch of people that shouldn't have been in there themselves. And I'm reiterating myself. But anyway, I'm just pretty aggravated. That's all. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you. And we are unfortunately at the end of the program. My apologies to the caller who is still hanging on hold. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It is very urgent right now. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday. Aloha, America.